What up? I'm Shep Apelka, and this is the Braves TomaBlog. I'm coming at you now with the second podcast that we're doing here. This is the new format that I'm trying to get going, get a new workflow on YouTube with. And so last week, I started out with the first one, making predictions, making an assessment of what I was expecting out of the trade deadline. Currently, as I start this, it is 5:04 on July 31st, so the trade deadline just concluded. Lots of moves that went down in between my last recording and this recording, and so my last recording, I believe it was Thursday. That night, Jonny Venters trade goes down at about 11:59. Since then, we've added Brach, Duvall, Kevin Gausman, Darren O'Day. We've given up a couple $100,000 in international money. Matt Wisler, Lucas Sims, Preston Tucker, Cumberland, Evan Phillips, Bruce Zimmerman, and Jean Carlos Encarnacion. And so, the roster is going to look completely different now. We've got, 4 or 5 guys on it that are going to be different, although O'Day's not going to play until next year. In terms of what we gave up, I think we can be honest about the fact that the only one that matters is Jean Carlos Encarnacion. I think we were all big fans of Jean Carlos Encarnacion. I've gotten tons of comments on YouTube and Facebook. My co-writer Jack is a huge fan of Jean Carlos Encarnacion, has written a lot about him. I am as well. And so that was a huge bummer to lose him. I think we can be honest about the fact that we're dealing from a place of depth. We got Darren O'Day in that trade, but it's also that with Jean Carlos Encarnacion, I thought he was developing into a very legitimate future third baseman. He was in the wrong spot in organization because he was behind Austin Riley. Austin Riley's the future third base of this team. Before that, he was behind Kevin Maitan as well. So we're making sure not to get too heavy at third base. But our infield generally is full. We still have Camargo. Duvall can play third base. You know what? Freddie Freeman can play third base. So at third base, we're fine. Not to mention we have tons of money that we could add Moustakas or Castellanos or something like that if we wanted to add at third base. So we traded from a position of depth. Something else that stuck out to me is that I've been talking about since the beginning of this year was our depth at minor league catching. Something that we've added a lot of over the last few years. If you remember back at the start of the rebuild, we were sitting around with no catching. We lost Brian McCann. We had Evan Gattis, who was barely a catcher, and we were trying to get, what was that guy's name? Christian Bethencourt to work out, and we didn't like him. So we got rid of him, and we didn't have much catching, and then we addressed it. We got William Contreras, we had Brett Cumberland, Alex Jackson, and then there was that one other guy that we added in that draft as well. I'm blanking on his name. I'll bring it up if I remember it. So I was saying at the beginning of this year, yeah, we probably trade one of our catchers because I think it's become pretty clear that our future at catcher is clearly William Contreras. Alex Jackson, I think we were hoping for at the beginning of this year, but he's not looking like much of an option down the line. I think next year we probably bring back Kurt Suzuki or Tyler Flowers, or maybe go outside the organization because I don't think any of them are ready yet. But yeah, we had a lot of catching depth, so we traded Brett Cumberland. I think that, I just want to say, I think that Alex Anthopolous did a really good job because we were sitting here complaining the whole time. I had tons of complaints saying he's waiting too long. We collapsed, which I think we certainly deserve to have collapsed, but as I currently speak right now, we're a half game out of first place. It looked as though we were going to collapse and it was going to be too late. But it doesn't look that way now. The team's looking very different. You saw the Phillies didn't go out and make any blockbusters either. They added Cabrera and they added Wilson Ramos. I think they're in the exact same position we are, where the Nats are. The Nats can't decide if they want to give up or keep going. For one thing I want to really emphasize is that the trade season for all NL East teams is certainly not over. I think the Phillies, the Braves, and the Nationals would all be making deals in August. I think that if Washington gets hot, you can expect them to start adding big time. They'll really go for it if they get on a winning streak. If they keep losing, they will start to look to trade their players. They traded Kinsler today. And so Anthopolous, at the beginning, he said it, all the fans said it. What did we need? We needed multiple relievers. We got that. We needed a starter. We got that. And we could use a bench bat. We got that. And for the most part, aside, if it weren't for Jean Carlos, we got it all for scraps. Especially the Duvall trade, Wisler, Sims, Tucker. none of them were going to be on the roster next year. And so to get Duvall, who will be on the roster next year, I think is an excellent move. And you look at how deep that makes our bench as you look at adding Riley to third base, and you have Dansby at short, although you have Camargo still over his shoulder giving him some pressure. You have Ozzie at second, Freddie at first. Our infield's going to be full. And then you look at first off the bench, it probably becomes Camargo, but then right after that you still have Charlie Culberson. And then you have a right-handed power bat that can play 4 positions in Duvall. It really gives us a strong bench. And so when you look at quality teams, they typically have a strong bench. So while we still might be looking to make some additions, we're going to be going for the jugular with the additions because our bench is already a very quality bench now. And we didn't give up anything to make it so. The team priority has been pretty clear to me, and it's what I was talking about on last week's podcast, saying that the team priority, what we're looking for, is innings. And I think that they showed that with their additions. They added Jonny Venters, who had been a specialist, but in our use of him thus far, we haven't used him as a specialist. We haven't brought him in for any lefties at all. He's generally replacing Sam Freeman, at least I hope. He's the lefty out of the pen now, but not really to be used as a specialist. He's going to be eating innings. Brach has always been an innings eater. He pitched 80 innings each of the last 2 years. He's pitched 40 already. And while it's not a great season for him, he still covers innings. And so that's what we can expect out of him. I don't think he'll do a great job at it, but I think you can expect him to be eating innings. And keep in mind what I told you last week about the amount of innings that we had already taxed our young relievers who we were hoping to get more out of in Carl, Winkler, Minter, and Biddle. We need to be protecting their arms. Now we can do that now that we have some veterans added to the bullpen. In terms of Darren O'Day, this came out later. You know, at first the news broke, and me and Jack we were talking with each other. We're breaking all this content about the Gausman deal, and then it comes in that Darren O'Day is a part of the deal, and we were like, "Whoa, Gausman's just a throw-in now. O'Day is the headliner in this deal." Darren O'Day, you guys probably remember, I mean, he's been an all-star, I think, multiple times. He's a right-handed reliever. He was the 8th inning guy for those Orioles teams that made the postseason with Zach Britton as the closer. And O'Day's gotten a lot of money from the Orioles before. So that's the one negative part of this trade, is that it adds $9 million to the payroll for next year. We have the money for sure. And Anthopolous proved that he was right. You know, I was a critic saying that it seems like you don't have any money to work with. He showed us that they do have some money to work with, taking on $9 million in Darren O'Day. Darren O'Day's out for all of this year with a hamstring injury. He had, I think, hamstring surgery, so he's out for all of 2018. Bring him back next year. It's essentially a big free agent addition. Someone to lock down the 8th inning. But I think that goes so remarkably far to add an 8th inning guy that you know that you can have out of the 8th inning, because what it does is that 8th inning, we know who we got. Now let's fill in the rest around, sometimes situationally. And so what I think that this opens up is A, competition for the closer role. It's either going to be AJ Minter, it's going to be Arodys Vizcaíno, whichever one of you is better, but in reality, whichever one of you is healthy, which is more than likely going to be Minter. But lately, he seems to be taking to the closer role now that he knows that it's his. So, you know, I think it's a great option to have a strong left-handed power arm lock down your closer role, and he's cheap. I think that that's a great option to have Minter at the closer. So Minter at closer, O'Day in the 8th, and then in the 7th, maybe you have someone lock that down like Winkler. But if not, you have Biddle, Winkler, Carl, they're middle relief now, and you use them accordingly to figure out how you want to shape your bridge. And then you have other guys that are going to be there for long relief. We have the option of bringing Jonny Venters back, and then you can use him as a specialist, and I think that that's a good option. Brach will be a free agent, and I think he'll be cheap. But, you know, it's unlikely that we bring him back. But either way, the adding O'Day brings so much stability to the bullpen that I absolutely think that it is worth it. Is it cheap? Absolutely not. But it also, and this is not to mention, if we did want to drop some money, we still have the option to do that. So there's Zach Britton, there's Kelvin Herrera, I think there's Familia, and of course there's Craig Kimbrell. If you want to go spend $20 million on a closer, you can do that. You're adding a lot of risk, and I think the only one that you can know is going to be quality is Kimbrell. boy, is that going to be expensive. So you think about spending $9 million on O'Day next year. You spend $20 million on Kimbrel. That's $30 million in your bullpen right there, plus Vizcaíno is arbitration eligible. $35 million bullpen on a team that doesn't have an ample amount of funds. You can start throwing money at your bullpen real quick. So lots of options there in the bullpen. The last thing I want to get to is the addition of Kevin Gausman. I heard the guys on MLB Network talking about this, the idea that this could be like a Jake Arrieta trade, that leaving the AL East is going to help. It always does, and that would have been true for Archer as well, or Stroman. To leave the AL East, your numbers are going to get better. If you leave the AL East, where you're facing the Red Sox, Yankees, and Blue Jays and Orioles, and then you go to the NL East, where you're going to be facing the Mets and the Marlins, it's going to get easier. I don't know about Gausman. I know the talent is absolutely there. And so, what we can do, what Hernandez can do to improve him, I really hope it works out. I think right now, what is Gausman here to do? He's here to eat innings. He's here to be a veteran, and he's here to get 6 innings out of him on nights when he pitches. Hopefully, he keeps it under 4 runs. In terms of next year, this is what confuses me, is that, you have all these guys coming up. So next year, let me just write these down. What you got: Teheran, Gausman, then you got Fulte, who is going to be in it. Newcomb is going to be in it. Soroka is definitely going to be in it. Then there's Allard, Tukey. You think about Gohara and Fried. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 guys. And then, you got rid of Wisler and Sims, so you need to worry about them. Oh, and plus, what's his name? Kyle Wright. Wright should be ready by about mid-season as well. So 10 guys. 10 guys going for 5 spots. You got Teheran and Gausman, Fulte, Newcomb, Soroka, and Fulte, Newcomb, and Soroka keep getting better every year, so you anticipate that they'll probably be your main guys next year. Allard, I'm not going to doubt Allard, and so I like that one. Tukey probably ready by midseason. Gohara can, snack back into it at any given point. But at this point, Fulte and Newcomb are going to become the veterans real quick. Teheran is the veteran right now, and I think he does a good job of it. The reason that I still like Teheran is that Teheran eats innings, and you're paying him a small amount of money to eat innings. So you look at the price of innings eater. I talked about this in the last podcast. Innings eaters cost a lot of money. Teheran doesn't. And so I like Teheran for that reason. Gausman, same thing. Eats innings. Pitched 180 innings each of the last 2 years. And going to do so again this year. Do you need Teheran and Gausman pitching the same in your staff if they're just going to pitch to a 4.50 ERA? I don't know that you need 2 of those guys, especially with Allard, Tukey, Gohara, Fried, and Wright pushing for spots. There's always going to be injuries, I grant that, but we do have the depth there, which is why part of me believes that we're going to be looking to trade one of these guys in the offseason. There's also the possibility that we're still looking for an ace. So, you think about what could be available. The only trade piece that I think about definitely being available this offseason is Jacob deGrom. Could always be involved in that, and I wouldn't be upset to add Jacob deGrom. Syndergaard as well. It wouldn't be cheap, but yeah, we can add an ace if we so desire. If so, there's not room in the rotation for Gausman or Teheran. And so you look to trade one of them, I think, in the offseason. I think that it's unlikely because they're guys that are too old. You can't keep sending them up and down from AAA. You don't have options on them to do that. So I think that adding Gausman, it puts Teheran on notice as well, along with Gausman, that you guys are kind of competing for a rotation spot next year. You'll pitch in the major leagues no matter what, but for one of them, I don't think that it will be with the Braves. And so, yeah, that's. I think I can wrap it up there at around 15 minutes. How do you guys feel about what we did? We certainly didn't sit on our hands or anything like that. It was fun to be buyers this year instead of sellers, and we definitely had a volume approach. We gave up a ton of international money that we weren't going to use anyway, and so the bullpen is better. The bench is certainly better. And I don't think that we gave up a ton, though it will suck to miss out on Jean Carlos. So, let me know how you guys feel. I'll respond to everyone in the comments. Once again, thank you guys for listening. This is Braves TomaBlog YouTube channel where we talk about the Braves, talk about baseball in general. Can't wait for this postseason run. Thanks for listening, and go Braves.